sacrifice, the cost of biblical sacrifice, the cost of biblical leadership, which is service and sacrifice. The story goes, actually, I just made the story up right now, but some would say, which is me, I would say, the story goes that there was a leadership job opening, and there's a lot of men who signed up, and they came up to stand in line to hopefully maybe get this position. And so, I don't know, there was probably 20 different people standing in line early in the morning to try out for this leadership position. So they continue, and they make it all through. Everyone comes out, and they pass through, and the last person comes up, and he asks the interviewer, why does everybody leave so looks like sad? Like this is supposed to be a good deal. We get to be a leader in this company. And the interviewer says, yes, would you like to apply? And he says, yes. It says, the first thing that you need to know is it's free. It's basically, we don't pay you. And then also you're going to have to sacrifice your time and in your service. And so at that point, this man also packs his bags and heads out very discouraged. So leadership sounds great until you realize the costs of service and sacrifice. A lot of service and sacrifice goes on. In the U.S., there are many, if I would say, if not most pastors that I know of are not fully employed. They get some benefits, some financial help, but many churches can't afford a pastor. And a lot of the servants who take care of things inside the church, whether it be finances and keeping up the grounds, everything's just kind of, people do it because they love the Lord. That's really about it. So there's a lot of sacrifice, a lot of service that goes into ministry and the Lord. But leadership in general involves a lot of service and sacrifice. So we're going to talk about that today. It can be help to you. We're going to read our verse here to start with, and we're going to be in Mark chapter 10 and verse 42, if you'd like to find your place there. Mark chapter 10, verse 42. Jesus called to him and saith unto them, Ye know that they which are accounted to rule over the Gentiles exercise lordship over them, and their great ones exercise authority upon them. So he was saying in the Gentilian world, the exercising of authority, they rule over them, but yet those actually have rulers over them, right? This is rulership, leadership. Yeah. But Jesus says, so shall it be the same for you. You're going to do the same thing. No, that's not what it says. Verse 43 says this, but so shall it not be among you. But whosoever will be great among you shall be your minister. Minister is the idea of one that takes care of others. And whosoever will be the chiefest of you shall be servant of all. For even the Son of Man came not to be ministered unto, but to minister, and to give his life a ransom for many. We have this often in many churches. Many churches, people come to church because they want to be ministered unto. They want to be made to feel good. They want to feel the joy of the Lord. They want to be sang to. They want to, itakodaya, and so on and so forth. But few are the ones who say, you know what? I will serve. I will help. I will participate. I will take care. Maybe not because I want to, but because I know it's needed. I could think of the Sunday school classes. I could think of the kids' classes. There's not a long line of people who want to stand in line to help take care of children. It's difficult. It's not easy. They're sometimes very unruly, but it's a sacrifice. It's a service and it's a sacrifice. But that's what Jesus said that his church is going to look like, right? The Gentile world, there is rulers and there is leaders, much like we see in some of the main types of churches out there. But it shouldn't be the same in God's work, right? There should be ministers helping, serving. So it shall not be the same with you. But whoever will be great among you shall be your minister, and whosoever will be the chiefest shall be servant of all. We're talking about servants, right? Servant leaders. And talks about Jesus, our great example, how he came not to be ministered unto, but to minister. Can I ask you a question maybe? Why do you come to church? You ever think about that? Well, we come to church because we should, but really, what is our motive? You know, it might be a challenge to some of you to say, listen, maybe the reason that I go might be to pour myself out for others, right? Yeah, but I don't get to sit in the main service. I don't get to do this because I'm taking care of something else. In many churches, they have like a children's church so that the children are not in the main service, right? Because of distractions. And again, that's not my policy. That's just what many churches do. And so during the main service, there are people who would like to be there to hear the song specials, to hear the music, to hear the preaching. But you know what? They say, I'm going to sacrifice my time and my ability that I should be here to be here taking care of the others. You know, what happens in the future if we get people that come that might be handicapped, mentally handicapped? And it's a time that we could minister unto people like that, but it takes servants. It takes people willing to sacrifice. For someone to come here to the church early Sunday mornings to turn the lights on, right? To turn the heat up, to get things ready. It's a sacrifice. It means you have to get out of bed earlier and you have to be here an hour before church even starts to help take care of things. What about when everybody goes home? You know, what about the person that stays when everybody else goes home? Everyone else goes out for coffee. Everyone else goes out for fellowship, but you don't. You miss out, right? That's what happens. And that's biblical. That's good. That's godly. I see here, that's an opportunity to minister. No, you guys go on. You guys go have coffee. You guys go have fellowship. I'm going to stay here and lock up and arrange and make sure everything's back to its proper place. I notice often, now I'm looking at it right now, right behind you where you're sitting, actually not you, but the camera, is a pile of dishes that got done. I don't know who did them, but someone took the time to minister unto others. It's been thoughts in my mind that we ought to just buy paper cups, you know, but no. We'll have nice things, and somebody ministers unto others. They're servants, you know, and I think it's wonderful. It's a beautiful opportunity to come together and to be able to minister unto others, okay? That's a beautiful thing. So that's what we're going to talk about today in our class is servant leadership in the kind of sacrificial servitude. The purpose of this lesson is to show that leadership always carries a personal cost. Leadership is not measured by visibility, by success, or by recognition, but by faithful service and willing sacrifice to Him. Again, we have to always check ourselves to say, hey, why am I doing this? Am I doing this to be recognized by others? Am I doing this because I want to be known as the guy who serves well? Well, then you're doing it for the wrong reasons. But to serve to the Lord, that's the purpose. So we're going to not take too much time tonight. Hopefully, I say that all the time, but we're going to do our best to get this concept through and that you guys have this. So we're going to start with 3 questions that might be popular to you. All right, 3 questions about serving. Number 1, how do I know when I am serving Christ sacrificially and not serving out of guilt or fear or out of people pleasing? Well, I can tell you that there's been times in my life when I have served out of guilt. Like I know I should, I don't want to, but I'm serving because I feel guilty. And if I'm not careful as a pastor, I can often probably make people feel guilty too. Maybe I'm doing it right now. Maybe I'm psychologically, subconsciously manipulating even though I don't feel like I am. I have no idea. Maybe I need counseling. But how do we know that we're not serving out of guilt or out of fear? I've been there. So a biblical answer could be something like motive. What's your motive, right? What about authority? Are you doing this just to please somebody? Or are you doing this because of your authority that's Christ? So biblical sacrifice flows from your obedience to Christ, not from fear of disappointing people. I am a people pleaser. I like to make people happy. And it shows itself in negative ways when I have to make difficult decisions that I know might not be pleasing to people. Of course, you know that we're going to go back to the U.S. for furlough, and one of the things that happens is we're trying to develop our it's all done, right? We're going to be in like 45 different churches, and there were churches that we're trying to stay just kind of in the center of the U.S., okay? But there were churches that called us all the way up here in the corner, okay? And I'm like, yes, I can. And Kaylin's like, no, we can't, so we're having this fun discussion. So she helps me, but she's right. Am I going up there because the Lord wants us to, or am I just trying to make people happy? And so that's my struggle. And if you're not careful, you're going to have to determine that on your own, because the world, the church, is going to give you probably more things than you can handle. And you've got to determine why you're doing it. Are you doing it out of sacrifice to the Lord, or are you doing it to please your own conscience? And it can be difficult sometimes to know that. All right. Service that violates God-given priorities or conscience is no longer biblical service, even if it appears spiritual. I was listening to a book here today, and it talked about a pastor that was in Asia. And he would travel all the time. I think he was home like maybe 1 week out of 6 months because he was serving the Lord. But yet he was never around his kids. He was never around his wife. He was serving the Lord, but he was neglecting his family. And that's not good either, right? I believe we see in the Bible that the first thing that God gave was our family. And that should be a priority in our life, to take care of your kids, to take care of your wife. But then we also get to sacrifice our time for the Lord as well. But we ought not get our priorities out of line. Question number two, is burnout unavoidable part of leadership? Or is it kind of like a warning sign? Burnout. Burnout is this idea that you go so fast, so hard that you just don't want to do anything anymore. You just want to quit. That's called burnout. You see people that might run through the park, right? Someone says that maybe they start running. They say, I want to start running. I want to be healthy. They're sprinting. Well, they're not going to run very far if you sprint. So what they do is they don't walk, but they kind of speed walk, right? And by speed walking, they're trying to get the maximum distance with energy by not also hurting their knees, right? So they speed walk. It looks kind of funny, but that's what they do. So in ministry, we ought to try to get down the road and do as much as we can for the Lord, for sure, but also not participate in burnout. I don't believe God's desire is for us to do so much that we burn out, right? And again, everybody's different. Everybody has different responsibilities. If you're single, well, you've got different responsibilities than a person who has a family, So everyone has to develop this on their own. And that's why we have to do classes like this, because, hey, sitting around doing nothing is not good, but yet going too hard too fast is not good either. And it's everybody's own decision. So here's a biblical answer. Burnout is not commanded in Scripture. It's usually a sign of carrying more than God's given. God never assigned us to take on that much responsibility. Biblical sacrifice has a cost, but it does not require self-destruction or replacing trust in God with personal control. So question 3, why does faithful service often lead to loneliness? Faithful service leading to loneliness. Well, faithful leadership often separates a person because obedience to truth does not always align with agreement. This could be multiple things, for instance, like I talked about with the coffee. After church, your friends, they might go out for coffee, but you stick around to clean, to lock up, to shut the lights out, to make sure the windows are shut. Often these windows in the church, they get left open. Someone has to stick around to make sure the windows are shut, make sure the lights and things are put away, that everything's kind of put back to normal, right? And you don't necessarily get to go have coffee with the friends, okay, after church. And it can lead to loneliness. And if you're not careful, that feeling, it could lead to burnout. Not that you shouldn't serve the Lord, but you're going to have to understand that leadership responsibility often leads to sometimes being left out of things. And I believe, honestly, that's okay. There's things that I grew up maybe not getting to do with others because my family had responsibilities that they had to do, okay? If we're always chasing after what we like or what makes us feel good, well, the world's going to be a very different place, that's for sure. So, a person can become lonely because they might be following the Lord. It could also be by fulfilling a service, whether it's in Sunday school class or something else, it's going to maybe cause disagreements, hurt feelings, and therefore you lose friends or you lose whatever, and so it can come out in many ways. But we have to understand that these things are natural, and the world needs people that are willing to sacrifice their comfort for the service of the Lord, okay? So feel free to chime in with questions if you'd like to. You're welcome to, okay? I'm watching my phone. So loneliness is often the cost of conviction, not a sign of failure. For instance, again, I go back to things like prison ministry, or when I did college campus ministry. Other kids that I went to school with, they went out and they did things together, but because I was often serving in different capacities, I did not get to participate in some of those things, okay? God allowed me to be part of other things. It's just not the things that I thought that I wanted to be part of. But that comes with the part of being a servant, is you're going to miss out on things that you want to be part of. But that's the part of sacrifice, ministering unto others, okay? Whether it's teaching a Sunday school class during the main service, you don't get to hear the song specials. You don't get to have this. And I know there's people in our church right now who come from that background where they served so much, they missed out on so much of the things that they wanted. And I feel bad for them, but yet I don't, because that's kind of the Christian's walk here. He says that the ministering that will take place in Christianity. So, yeah, there will be loneliness. That's true, but it's not in vain. It's not in vain. These last 3 questions, reveal that leadership is not about what we do, but what leadership costs us personally. It will cost you. By being a leader here in this church, well, it's cost me family back home, friends, weddings, funerals I didn't get to go to, right? It's cost my kids, their friends, my wife. There's always a cost to stepping out, but the world is run by people willing to step out and to risk and to give up what other people have. Don't be afraid of it. That's what I want to say. Don't be afraid of it. So before we step too much further into this realm, I want to give a real recap for the last 4 weeks. Number 1, the first week we were here, we talked about a leader follows well. to be a good leader, you've got to learn to be a good follower, right? I'm not talking about a yes man. There's some similarities, right? But a leader, a follower, a good follower makes a great leader. Week number 2, we talked about faithfulness, being consistent. Now, I know sometimes we have sicknesses. You can't make it because you're sick. We had this last week. That's fine. Sicknesses will happen. Things are going to happen. Cars will break down. Don't ever feel guilty about being sick, okay? Now, if you're always eating, McDonald's or something and you're always getting sick, well, maybe we should think about a lifestyle change, okay? But we're all going to get sick. We're all going to miss appointments. We're all going to have that stuff. But if you're consistently late, if you can't be trusted to take care of something on time, or you forget to do something and it's a consistent basis, that's a problem. So there needs to be faithfulness. There is no excuse to be late in our modern day, right? Historically, they didn't have buses. Historically, they didn't have taxis. Historically, they didn't have walking paths. They had to cross rivers, right? They didn't have cell phones that you could set automatic reminders and timers and text messages and emails. You can send yourself 20 different reminders for one event per day. There's no excuse to miss anything today. What it's really translated into, I believe, is just laziness. Just pure laziness. And I'll be honest with you. One of the things I used to do when I used to, and I'll do this also when I go to the U.S. and I preach and I teach in these 45 whatever different churches, the pastor usually tell me how much time that he's allotted me to speak. I'll usually take my phone and I'll set on a vibrating timer for 5 minutes less than what I've been given. I've been given 15. I set my timer for 10. I've been given 30. I set my timer for 25. And I put that phone in my pocket on silent. And then in 5 minutes before I'm supposed to be done, my vibrating phone will go off in my pocket and I'll say, hey, it's time to shut down. Because I want to be responsible. That pastor has a plan for that church service, right? And I need to be done at a certain time because he's asked me to, all right? So it's faithful. To be faithful and trusted with time, with positions. And so number 2 was faithful. Number 3, stewardship. If you're given something, take care of it. It's not yours. Your time, we talked about, is not your own, right? This church is not ours. We're probably going to leave our vehicles here while we're gone in the U.S. for 4 months because we don't plan on putting them in our suitcase. We're just going to leave them here. And we're probably going to leave them here at the church. And then that way, if you guys have ministry opportunities, going to the woods, going to the zoo, you guys can take those and use those. But again, it's stewardship. If we come back and the cars have been crashed and dinged up and spray painted, and you're like, whatever, no big deal. You see how that's a problem? No, I don't even have to think about it because I know you guys would be like, oh, we're going to take care of this. This is his property. So we're going to take and we're going to wash it and clean it and put it in good order. I have no doubt about that. Never even thought about something different. But when we're talking about stewardship, we're talking about God's timing. We forget that our time is the Lord's. Our body is the Lord's. So when we think about serving him, we think about giving something up, we think about what we miss. And we forget that, listen, all of this is his. Okay? So that was number 3, stewardship. Number 4 was submission and authority. Authority must always be exercised under submission. So when I exercise authority as a pastor or a missionary, I also have people that I have to answer to, okay, as well as answering to God. So we all will have some kind of authority, and we all must have some kind of submission. Now, when these 4 concepts are lived out, leadership begins to demand personal sacrifice. Personal sacrifice. This is the idea of biblical sacrifice, all right? So, biblical sacrifice flows from obedience and is, listen, it is limited. Limited. God will not, ready? This is you, all right? This is you. God is not going to demand that you pour yourself out all the way in there and then, you know, that's not the idea. That's not what God wants from you. He does not want to squeeze you out and throw you away. He loves you. He wants to take care of your mind, of your body. He wants you to be fruitful. He wants you to be flourishing in your mind, in your life. So he's not going to demand and drain you fully, right? Sometimes Lubisha gets angry at me because I take my phone, doesn't get angry at me, but I let my phone run all the way down to 0 and die. That is not what God does with us. He does not just drain our batteries and say, okay, now recharge so I can use you again. That is not God, right? God uses us, lets us charge, takes care of us, gets us a new screen, right? It helps us to stay charged, I guess you could say. So he's not going to drain you fully, but he does want to use you. And sometimes when we feel drained, it's because it's our fault, not God's fault. So it's limited. Biblical sacrifice is limited by Scripture. God honors God-given responsibility. Now, unbiblical sacrifice, bad sacrifice, is always driven, or many times driven, by guilt, by fear. And it often ignores the biblical boundaries. It leads to burnout or resentment. Okay? Many leaders are exhausted not because they are faithful, but because they carry burdens that God has never designed them to carry. There's a lot of things to do in this world, right? There's a lot of ways to pour yourself out. We have to choose which are the ones that God wants us to do and which ones are just selfish, I guess you could say. So I've got a couple biblical stories here, 2 biblical stories, and then we'll be finished here, okay? We got about 30 minutes left, so stay tuned. We'll be done, and then you can go to sleep and finish your chai, whatever you need. All right, biblical story number 1, Moses. Now, we all know the story of Moses. Moses was leading the children of Israel, and he was trying to take care of this, trying to take care of that. People would come to him. He would make decisions and say, hey, go do this. Hey, fix that. And it was just becoming a lot. Well, he goes, and the story goes that he goes to his father-in-law, I believe it was, and Jethro counseled Moses and says, listen, stop doing everything. You're going to, he didn't say it, but I think he wanted to say burnout. So they developed a system that was delegation, right? So this is where the 12 tribes and all this type of council stuff came in. You'll find this in Exodus chapter 18. He says, Jethro says, the thing that thou doest is not good. Thou wilt surely wear away. So he knew it, and Moses knew it on the inside. And so Moses began to develop a system to help get the same things done, but involve more people to do it, more servants, okay? So we see that Moses even limited his ministry. He said, I have to back down. I'm doing too much, right? Some Christian leaders, some Christians would say, no, this is what God has given me to do, and I'm going to do it. Well, some would even say, I'm not going to do anything. I don't feel like God wants me to do anything. Both are wrong. We need to find the right amount. I think of many of you guys. I don't know who's all watching online right now, but you guys, in my mind, you are doing things around the church, and you're taking care of things, and you're helping, and you're teaching classes, and you're being part of things, okay? That's good. And it can come to the future where it can become too much. So you're going to, I can't be the person who watches your life and tell you you're doing too much or not enough. Boy, that would cause problems in the church. Imagine if I went to every person in the church and began to tell them myself whether you're doing too much or not enough. Yeah, well, that would cause problems, So no, it's best. It's always best if you have a good relationship with the Lord and you have a heart for him and you see, let's go back to the beginning, and you see that you don't follow well. You begin to fix that. You see that your faithfulness struggles, right? Your priorities are out of line with God. You think, hey, I've got to take care of this stuff and God can wait. Well, your priorities are out of line, right? But you take care of this between you and God. I don't want to be the one to have to come to you and tell you and fix these things. Stewardship, submission, authority, right? And then today, sacrifice. If we'll just take care of these things on our own, man, that's the best way to take care of our lives, is between us and the Lord. Okay? So that's the story of Moses. So this story teaches us that sacrifice does not mean refusing help. God never intended leaders to function alone, but leaders have to have people that are faithful, that know what stewardship is, that know what accountability is, that know what submission is, that know what authority is, right? So that's what these lessons are about, is to help prepare men, prepare women to help take us to the next level. Because God will not let us go to the next level unless he sees that we're prepared. I think a lot of churches are stagnated. They're here in this ball. God wants them to do this, to have more outreach, to have more responsibility to do stuff, but he sees that they're still here. And unless they grow mentally, spiritually, then why would God give us more responsibilities, And so it's time now to challenge ourselves, to challenge yourself, to look yourself in the mirror and say, am I doing right on this? Grade yourself. There's 6 lessons that we're going through about these. Go through each one of them and say, how am I doing? How could I do better? Every company that I know of should have a yearly time when they look at themselves and they evaluate themselves. How are we doing? Are we slowing down? Are we moving forward? Are we capable of taking the next steps? Right? And then they can adjust that. And that's what we should be doing as well. I had a book I was going to integrate into this, but I'm not going to do that today. I'm going to skip this book for different reasons. But the next picture that we have is the picture of Paul. Paul was willing to suffer. 2 Corinthians 4, it says that we talk about Paul suffered greatly, but he never viewed his sacrifice as meaningless. He says in 2 Corinthians 4, for which cause we faint not. It's not worthless. Some people could ask me, at the end of my life, going over there, doing that, was it worth it? And I'm like, was serving the Lord worth it? Absolutely it was, right? Getting to miss out on this and this, was it worth it? Absolutely. This life is but a vapor. It appears for a moment, then vanishes away, right? What's that one quote that the missionary had? He said, call no man a fool who gives up that which he cannot keep to gain that which he cannot lose. Talking about serving the Lord, right? Some of these missionaries went around to some crazy places and got killed, but they would say that quote. So we could see Paul. Paul accepted suffering, right, as part of obedience, not as failure. His endurance was anchored in eternal purposes, not recognition. We got to go down to Niche here this weekend, and there was no persecution, physical. There was some mental persecution, but in my mind, and as weak as I am, I'm tempted to not do that again because people didn't like it. I had mental persecution, and I'm almost willing to give up simply because of mental persecution. There was no physical persecution, just mental. And I already want to quit because of mental persecution, because of mental suffering. You see, we're going to go to Bosnia this week. Some of you are going to come with me. And I don't know what's going to happen. I feel pretty awesome to have, like maybe a Mexican gangster coming with me and some Russian mafia guys coming to be my bodyguard, or whatever. I'm just kidding. But it's going to be a good time, but I don't know what's going to happen. But I know serving the Lord and whatever we do, no matter the persecution and potentially the physical persecution, he is worthy. He is worthy. Yeah, mental persecution is still a thing. I'm telling you, I suffer mental persecution all the time, right? So you guys know it's true. Don't make fun of me. So Christ, the perfect model of service. For even the Son of Man came not to be ministered unto, but to minister. Let me ask you a question. Are you a Christian? Most of you would say yes. Okay. A Christian, by definition, is Christ-like. Okay. Do you live your Christian life to be ministered unto or to minister to others? In whatever case. A simple one would be church. Do you come to be ministered unto or to minister? You can go through your family. When you go places, do you go to be ministered unto or to be ministered to? And if we're going to be like Christ, we may not have many opportunities, but it should at least be on our mind to think about ministering unto. When we go back on this furlough, one of the things that happens is we go to these churches and they're kind of pampering us. They say, oh, here's some food. Here's some toys for the kids. Here's whatever. Here's a new tie. Okay. Here's a pair of socks. And so they minister unto us. And if I'm not careful, I can develop into a mentality that says, well, I'm feeling pretty special. But that should not be the case. Last time we did this, we went and we asked the pastor of the church, what are some things that we can do? We took our tools with us, and we were able to fix bathrooms and to fix sometimes roofs and baptismal pools and different things that we were able to do for people. And because we want to have that ministering spirit and not that feed me, I'm special spirit. And it can happen in churches. So just be mindful of that. And when you become a leader, when you're in leadership positions, it's not going to be all smelly, beautiful roses. It's going to cost. And it's going to cost you missing out on things. Sometimes even here, I've heard people says, I can't do this because I want to go be with this, But yet I've also heard someone here wanted to go to another church function, and they said, you know what, that can wait. Let me finish doing what I need to do here. And to me, that kind of showed me some sacrifice. Like, wow, you would give up your little bit of a plans for today to finish what you have to do here. That was pretty cool, and I think God will bless that, keeping him first. And that sacrifice doesn't go unnoticed by the Lord. And the third one we'll give you here is Christ. The fourth one, Christ is the perfect model, and I already quoted it here. He says in Mark 10, he didn't come to be ministered, but to minister unto. Jesus served sacrificially, yet always in perfect obedience to the Father. Christ demonstrates the biblical sacrifice is costly. If it doesn't cost, it may not be a sacrifice, but it was intentional and he was obedient. He was not reckless and he was not driven by guilt. And man, this weighs on me a lot because as we develop outreach programs, so I know some of you have put down on our papers our what you call them. It's the reset renew papers that we filled out about communication. Well, I think it's good to communicate. I worry about over communicating because I don't want to make people feel guilty. If I say, hey, we're going to go do this, I try to make announcements from the church. I try to give you announcements, but I'm fearful to over communicate and thereby kind of push people into guilt, And so it's just my thing that I'm working through. It's not you. It's just me. Okay. Something that I'm trying to work through, but not guilt driven. I don't want to do things because of guilt, and I don't want to be the person that causes you guilt, right? Imagine, let's just say one of you guys this weekend that's going to come with me to Bosnia, some work comes up, all right? You come up and you come into work, or you come and say, Brother Miller, I can't come with you this weekend like I planned because some work things came up and I have to stay. And then I say, really? You're going to stay here and miss out on serving the Lord? Are you really going to choose work over the Lord? Now, I would never say that, but if I'm not careful, my countenance or how I act could kind of imply that. And I don't ever want someone to do something simply out of me. Yeah, I would love it if I had 4 guys standing around me during the piazza while giving out Bibles in Bosnia. That'd be great. But I don't want ever to be a guilt thing. I want it to be something that, hey, I want to do this for him. And then we can do that together. But it shouldn't be guilt. Some of you help me with paperwork. Some help me with different stuff that we do. And every one of you, I don't ever want to be the reason and the guilt that you do it. Oh, he's got a family. He's doing this. I'm helping Brother Miller out because I feel sorry for him. I feel guilty for him. Don't do that. That's a good way to get burned out on things. Do it for the Lord. Serve him, not me, okay? So this is biblical servitude, him first. In closing, we're going to end here. Next week is the final one, and then you're done. You're free to go, live your life, go back to the meadows where you came from. But in closing, the next week, we're going to be doing endurance. Endurance and finishing well. Anybody can start something, but few finish it. Okay? Anyone can start, but few finish well. And so next week, we're going to talk about endurance, pushing through, continuing, right? Not quitting. There's so many times. Quitting is not a good characteristic of a leader, right? To stick with it, to follow through. That's what we need. And you've got to practice that. I believe God's going to give you things for you to do. And he's going to test you in your life. And I believe he wants to test you. And I believe it's a way that we can grow into the next thing. Maybe it's a job opportunity, and you have to choose between a job opportunity that takes you further away from the Lord, or maybe you have 2 jobs, and the one brings you closer to serving him opportunities with less pay, and maybe something else that has more pay but takes you further away. I don't know what the future might hold, but I do believe God will give us tests for this. So in closing, let's say that biblical leadership, I believe, always costs something. Don't surrender to be a leader, or don't surrender to serve the Lord if you're not willing to sacrifice, if you're not willing to lose something, right? I know sometimes we worry about our families. Why would I want to serve the Lord? Why would I want to be a preacher or a pastor or a missionary or serve the Lord in any of these capacities? Because I see what other people do, and they're missing out. They're losing. They're not successful in life because of their choices they made. Listen, if that's your decision, that's fine, but that's not biblical sacrifice and biblical leadership. Biblical leadership and biblical sacrifice always costs something, and you've got to be willing to make that decision to lose out. You may not. God may bless you far and above your peers, but it may cost you. And I just want you to know that it's worth it. All right? Call no man a fool who gives up that which he cannot keep to gain that which he cannot lose. All right? Sacrifice is necessary. Burnout is not necessary. Burnout is not commanded. obedience defines our faithful service. Okay, so appreciate you guys. We'll let you go a little early. God is good. He's worth it. He's worth the sacrifice. He's worth staying late. He's worth coming early. He's worth doing the things no one else wants to do, right? And I'm thankful for him. He did that for us. And I believe as a Christian, we should do that for him. And we need men and women who will stand in the gap and do the things that nobody wants to do. That's Christ-like. That is Christian. That's it.